Alright, so why don't we just do a quick look over and see what needs work. These lines need to come down, and I'm going to dissolve this whole edge, I think. Doesn't look like it's doing too much, so X, dissolve edges. That'll make it easier to bring this down. And I think this whole edge can be dissolved. We are using it to round out this piece a little bit more, so we probably don't want to dissolve it there. But everywhere else we should be able to dissolve these edges. Oh, we don't want to lose this one either. Alright, so dissolve edges. No detail should have been lost. And this edge is not doing anything. I think that I added that when I beveled this earlier. Dissolve edges. I think it looks better without that edge. I'm going to grab these faces and make them smooth. And we have to be a little bit careful with that. But the top of this really is smooth in the reference image. It seems to be having some trouble shading this part here, and I'm wondering if it's because we have non-planar faces. So one thing we can do is try cutting across one of these with J, and Control Z. Okay, so that made no difference. And I'm going to take these faces over here and round them. Smooth. Smooth. And sharp edge. And a lot of you are probably more familiar with this process than I am. I usually prefer kind of a low poly style, so I'm not trying to, like when it's low poly, usually you want to see the hard edges. So it's a little bit different, just a different style. But it's a good learning experience. We're all learning something today. Hopefully. Smooth these. And thankfully most of this will be covered up by the top piece that we build later. So we want this to be smooth here. We're not going to see this part that we built before because it's going to be covered. I'm not going to worry too much about the geometry there. I feel like this is coming along really well. The holes are pretty important, so why don't we use the Boolean modifier for that? Smooth. We do want some distinction though between these faces. Alright, so we might want to clean this up later, but I'm just going to forge ahead for now. Alright, so the next thing is the Boolean modifier to create these holes. And I did do a video on something like this before. Oh, and also, we're getting this crease in the middle. And the reason for that is that there are faces on the inside here. So I'm going to delete all these internal faces. Delete faces. There we go. We apply the mirror modifier, and now that crease is gone. Alright, so I'm going to add a cylinder. RY90. Tab into edit mode. And I'm just going to line it up over one of these. Like so. And then I'm going to extrude this face. I need to be in vertex selection mode so I can scale it in. And then I'm going to bring that forward into the model. Alright, and now we can use the array modifier. And actually, yeah, that'll be fine. So add the array modifier. We want to go in the relative y direction. And then we can bump this up to, looks like 8. 1.2.5, perfect. And then duplicate the object one time and drop this down to 7. Alright, so now if we use the Boolean modifier, we can make those simple cutouts. So add Boolean. Now you'll notice, I'll go ahead and show you what it's going to do. So difference with probably cylinder 04, yeah. We want to take the difference with cylinder 04. So now if I hide cylinder 04, you'll see we got that cut out. It does look like it's a little bit too far in. And from this reference image, you can tell it comes in a little bit, and then it's got even more of a cut after that. So let's undo that. And thankfully, when you're using the array modifier, or the Boolean modifier, you're working non-destructively, so you can just simply enable and disable it at will. And so I'm going to delete cylinder 04 and just work on this guy here. Bring this in and extrude it forward. And once again, we can position this and set it to 7. And add the Boolean modifier. We want to make sure we do it on the weapon. Take the difference with cylinder 03. Now if I hide cylinder 03, you can see we got our cutouts. And they look pretty good. It's not perfect. And you'll notice it's only on one side. So the reason for that is because we're doing it after the mirror, we want to move it up in the stack so that it comes before the mirror. So if we look at it from this angle, we can see it a little bit more like the reference image. So theirs is a little bit more shallow on that first inset, and then it's pretty sharp going in after that. So Alt-H to unhide, Z for wireframe, and move this back. Alright, so now we're going to apply the Boolean with the first set of cylinders and create a Boolean for the second set. Difference, cylinder 04, apply. And now we can just delete these objects. And the topology there doesn't seem too bad. If we wanted to, we could come in and clean this up just by deleting the extra edges. So a lot of these could go. And we could also create horizontal lines and then attach everything to that. But I don't really think that that's necessary right now. I think that later we're going to add materials to this using a shader editor, and so the actual topology of the surface won't matter too much. So does that look good enough? What's missing? What could be improved? We could add some nuts here. There's a kind of a divot right there. Why don't we add that? And also add that right there. So for that, I'm tabbing into edit mode. I'm going to hit Control R, and this face is just not happy because of how we made it and how I dissolved the edges in the middle. So actually I'm going to delete this whole face and recreate it. And for that I'm going to use the grid fill, if I can find it. It always takes me a long time to find grid fill. Control E, W. I don't use it very often, so that's part of the reason. Alright, let's look for it in here. So I think it's in faces. Edges. Alright, you know what? Why don't we try space and grid fill? There we go. Alright, so now we should be able to create those edge loops. There we go. And for the cylinder part, I'm just going to Alt right click on any of the rings here, so we can take that one, and Shift D, bring it over, period to zoom in on that piece, and reposition it and extrude. Control L, actually that's not what I want. Alt right click and face. Control L, Control N, scale it up. And this looks like it should actually be up here. So why don't we move that up there and hide it. And we're still seeing it because it's still being mirrored even though we hit it, but that's fine. Now we're going to go into 3, Z, and box select. And we want to move all this geometry up. Ever so slightly. That's better. And it looks like it needs to come out to the right, like so. And then Alt H to bring this back. Control L and reposition. And I'm just going to bring it in and bevel it. Alright, so that piece is concluded. I'm sorry that took so long. It is a very complicated piece of geometry. And I think we pretty much nailed this section of it. I'm not very happy with this part, but also I'm not particularly good at smoothing faces in Blender. Why don't we try just making this flat. And I think this will look quite a bit better when it's got the overhanging piece covering it right here. So for now, we can just kind of ignore that part and clean it up later. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you learned something in this video. I had a lot of fun making it, and I'll see you next time.